Hello and welcome to Unacademy IAS, a one stop destination for all the English medium civil services aspirants. Welcome to another session of Economy this week. And in this session, we are going to cover economic current affairs which has appeared in different newspapers such as Economic Times, Business Line, Mint, etc. from 12th to 18th February 2026. Now, this discussion will cover all the topics that is relevant for prelims as well as the mains examination. So, if you're liking this initiative, do not forget to hit the like button. If you're yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. Now, let me start the discussion. But before that, a very important announcement. I know a lot of you have started preparing for the Civil Services Exams 2027. To ace the exam in the first attempt itself, you need proper guidance. Guidance in terms of right coverage of the static portion, correct coverage of current affairs, correct reading material, and sufficient number of prelims as well as mains test series. Once you enroll into our courses, all of this will be made available to you. And right now, our courses are available at a price of 17,999. And once you enroll, you also become eligible for CSE Assure. Do not miss out. Those interested in enrolling, check out the details by clicking on the link provided in the description below. Now, let me begin the discussion. First, and very important article, the Government of India has launched e-Rupee powered PDS pilot and Annapurti food grain ATM in Gujarat. What are the important points? Let's understand. First and foremost, let me start with PDS. PDS stands for Public Distribution System. And the idea for PDS is that the government, that is specifically here, the state governments, have set up ration shops. I'm using the term ration shop. You'll also come across the term fair price shops. So, Government of India has set up fair price shops throughout India. Now, the network of these particular shops will be used to essentially distribute the food grains. Distribute the food grains. For what purpose? The Government of India has implemented an initiative called as National Food Security Act of 2013. And under the National Food Security Act of 2013, the Government of India has identified two categories of beneficiaries. One category is a priority household. If you are a beneficiary from a priority household, then monthly you will be getting access to 5 kgs of free food grains, monthly 5 kgs. And if you're identified as a Antyodaya beneficiary, Antyodaya household, then you'll be provided with 35 kgs of free food grain every month. But the difference is, in the first case, it is per person. Second one, it is per household. Now, there is a need to identify the households, which is done by the government. That is specifically under the NFSA, the beneficiaries are identified by the state government. The food grains are allocated by the central government. And using the network of the ration shops, the food grains are distributed to the beneficiaries. Now, here comes the problem. What is the problem? In lot of cases, we have seen that the beneficiaries are not getting the right amount of food grains. Even if they're getting, there is a delay. For example, a beneficiary will go to the ration shop, there is a long queue, and the beneficiary, after reaching the position, let's say after reaching to the, let's say, first spot, will provide the thumbprint, that is Aadhaar credentials. Because right now in the ration shops, there is EPOS system, electronic, right, point of sales system, where you need to authenticate yourself. Authenticate in the sense, how does the shopkeeper come to know you are a beneficiary? So you provide your Aadhaar credentials. Now, what if at that particular point of time the Aadhaar server is down? So there have been certain issues that have been found which are plaguing the PDS system right now. So Government of India, in order to address this, now has launched a pilot project. Mind you, this is a pilot project. The Government of India stated that after testing out the pilot phase in Gujarat, some of the regions of Gujarat, we will extend this to some of the union territories as well. That is a Chandigarh, Dadra and Nagar Haveli, etc. And after that, this will be extended to apply for whole of India. Why, you will understand in some time. So in the pilot basis or under this particular pilot project that has been implemented by the government, rather than asking the beneficiary go to the ration shop, then authenticate what if the server is down, what if the beneficiary doesn't get the right amount of food grain, etc. Now the government simply says the beneficiary has to open a wallet, CBDC wallet. CBDC, by the way, stands for Central Bank's Digital Currency. The government of India will transfer the subsidy amount in the form of the CBDC tokens. CBDC tokens into this particular wallet. I will take the mobile phone, go to the ration shop. If I'm the beneficiary, I'll go to the ration shop and I'll basically scan, tokens are transferred, and now I will be issued with, let's say, the 5 kgs of free food grains. Is everybody able to understand the sequence? I'll repeat it again. I am the beneficiary, unlike the current system which is applied to the rest of India, where I will go, I will authenticate myself, and then I'll be given free food grains. Rather than this, I will be sent with a, right, let's say the tokens, CBDC tokens. I will take my smartphone, I'll scan the QR code, and the tokens will be withdrawn from the wallet, and the money will, the food grains, free food grains will be given to me now. This is essentially the new system that has been introduced by the government of India on pilot basis in Gujarat. Now, what is the advantage of this? Advantage is very simple. One, I don't have to go through the struggle of identifying myself. I don't have to be worried whether I'm getting the correct amount of food grains or not. And the beauty of this particular CBDC tokens that the government is trying is that these are programmable. These are programmable. The government can track these particular tokens in the sense, one particular token, imagine I'm transferring the tokens by scanning. I'm supposed to receive 5 kgs. So government can track on which date I've used the token, whether have I received the 5 kgs of food grains or not. All of this is trackable for the government, and this will promote efficiency of the PDS system, also transparency in the PDS system. This is one aspect of the discussion. Now, earlier I said, once this will be tried out on pilot basis in Gujarat, we are going to extend it to some of the union territories. Why? There's a particular reason behind this. Earlier, there was a committee set up by the union government in the context of Food Corporation of India, and that is Shanta Kumar Committee. Shanta Kumar Committee. Now, this particular Shanta Kumar Committee had recommended that you need to identify the cities where the population will be more than 1 lakh. That is 10 lakh plus. More than 1 million. That is 10 lakh plus. Identify these cities, and in these particular regions, rather than providing food grains to the beneficiaries, we should implement cash-based PDS. The cash-based PDS. What is this idea of a cash-based PDS? Imagine government will give me 5 kgs of free food grains. For this, government will spend a subsidy of 200 rupees. But the problem for the beneficiary is, what if the beneficiary wants other food grains? What if the beneficiary wants edible oil? What if the beneficiary wants, let's say, pulses? All of that is not distributed under the PDS. So the element of a choice is missing under the current PDS. So government of India decided, let's not give 5 kgs of food grains. Rather than this, whatever is the subsidy amount, let's transfer the subsidy amount into the account of the beneficiary. Into the account of the beneficiary. Now the beneficiary will use the money, subsidy money, and purchase the food grains from the market. With this idea, this model of a cash-based PDS, that is through the DBT, was implemented in many of these union territories. But what has been observed by the government, the beneficiaries, rather than using the money to purchase food grains, they are using the money for other purposes, for gambling, betting, purchasing tobacco products, purchasing alcohol products, etc. Now, rather than this, now they will be replacing the cash-based PDS with the CBDC tokens. And once the CBDC tokens are issued into my wallet, I will not be able to use it for any other purpose except purchasing the food grains from the ration shop. Except for purchasing the food grain from the ration shop, absolutely no other usage. So this is the reason once it is tried out on pilot basis in Gujarat, it will be extended to some of the union territories and thereafter to the whole of India. Next, there is also an announcement associated with Annapurti Food Grain ATM. Annapurti Food Grain ATM. What is the importance of this food grain ATM? Many of the times it has been seen that the beneficiaries go to the fair price shop, they will have to wait in longer queues, and even if they get food grains, right, what is the guarantee that they will get the right quantity of the food grain, etc. Now, rather than right going through all of this, rather than all of this, what if an ATM machine, just like we withdraw money from the ATM, what if there is a machine which will basically release food grains? That kind of a machine has been installed now, and that is called as a Annapurti Food Grain ATM. And by the way, this is not a new model. I hope you understand the idea for food grain ATM is not new in India. Multiple states, in multiple cities or multiple regions, already the food grain ATMs are there. But under this particular project, it has been introduced in Gujarat now. What will happen in case of food grain ATM? I will provide my credentials. Again, it is a machine, by the way. Nobody will be sitting. There is no right, the shopkeeper, etc. I will go to the machine. I will provide my credentials, and within 30 to 40 seconds, the government simply says a bag of 25 kgs of food grain will be dispensed by the machine. The machine will basically release a bag of 25 kg food grains. So the advantage is I don't have to wait in line. I don't have to be worried whether I'm getting 25 kgs or 20 kgs, etc. So this is basically the model of Annapurti ATM machine, and the government has stated going forward, in addition to these food grain, other kind of, let's say, products, agriculture commodities that are needed by the households, they can also be dispensed through the machine in packet of 1 kgs. So these are certain important points associated with the first article. Please make a note of all of this. And I know a lot of you will be thinking, so many concepts you have discussed in this article. How do I remember? How do I make notes? Should I write it down, etc.? Once the session is over, the link of the PDF that I'm using as well as the handouts, that is the notes, will be uploaded, the link of which will be provided in the description of the video. Please click on the link, download, but more importantly, use it for revision purposes. Use it for revision purposes. Now, let's solve the question. Consider the following statements regarding CBDC, central bank's digital currency. The CBDCs are programmable. Of course, yes. You can program the CBDC according to your requirement. The CBDC are fiat money. Yes. CBDCs are fiat money. These are basically the digital versions of the hard, right, let's say hard currencies. That is basically, when I say hard currencies, the physical copies or the physical version of the fiat money that you have, the rupee notes as well as the rupee coins. The CBDCs issued by Reserve Bank of India are counted as part of its liability. Yes. Any amount of money, by the way, any amount of money that is distributed by RBI, be it currency coins or currency notes, these are counted as a part of RBI's liability in its balance sheet. All the three statements are true. Right option will be option C here. Let's go forward. Stay Article 2 now. Startup India Fund. Startup India Fund. Now, what is the idea? The government of India 10 years ago announced an initiative, Startup India. Under this, the government also came out with Startup India Action Plan. Under the Startup India Action Plan, there were multiple provisions or multiple points that were mentioned by the government, which were implemented in the form of policies. Now, there was one area that was focused by the government of India. What was the area? Lot of these particular startups find it very difficult to get access to funds. Is the point clear? These particular startups find it very, very difficult to get access to funds. If you want to start a startup, you require money, you're bootstrapped, you'll go to a bank. bank says the business is very risky. You go to a lot of investors. Lot of investors do not understand your business model. It could be viable. You never know. It could be viable. It could be right one of the best ideas that could work out in the market. But the investors might feel this is too risky. They will also not take a risk of investing in your project. So government of India has realized that there is a lot of issue in terms of startups raising funds in the market. So back in the year 2016, I repeat, back in the year 2016, the government of India came out with a 10,000 crore rupee fund. 10,000 crore rupee fund, that is Startup India Fund of Fund. Startup India Fund of Funds. In short, FOF. Startup India Fund of Funds. Now, why it is called as a fund of funds, I'll explain. Just give me 30 seconds. So, objective of the government of India was we will allocate 10,000 crore rupees, and using this particular 10,000 crore rupees through DPIIT, that is, it is essentially established or set up by DPIIT, the authority under the Ministry of Commerce or the department under the Ministry of Commerce, which is responsible regarding the startup policies in India. So, set up by or established by DPIIT. Through this particular fund, we would be investing in some of the startups, but not directly, indirectly. Not directly, but indirectly. And that is the reason these were referred to as fund of funds. How so? Let me explain this. Imagine this is the fund of funds, FOF. From here, out of let's say 10,000 crore rupees, certain amount of funds would be allocated to certain types of financial institutions. Now, I'm using the term financial institutions, but in reality, these are alternate investment funds, AIFs, alternate investment funds. So, the funds from the fund of fund will be allocated to AIFs, and the AIFs are investing in getting the equity of certain credible startups in the market. Those particular startups which will have a proof of concept, where the business model is viable, etc. This money will be utilized along with their own investment, because the alternate investment funds by default are also investing in the market. So along with their investment, money now will be invested in multiple startups. And this is how the government through the FOF is using or is ensuring that the startups are getting access to funding. But now, what is the logic of this? Some of you will be thinking, sir, why is the government of India investing like this? Why can't the government directly invest in a startup? The problems are like this. You are never comfortable if government will directly invest in the equity of a startup. If you are the owner of a startup, be honest by the way. If you are the owner of a startup, government will invest, provide money, that is in return they will get certain amount of equity. Will you be comfortable with that particular position where government of India is having ownership in your company? So that is one issue. Rather than government directly owning, now the equity is with alternative investment funds. But much more importantly, the government may not have the right expertise to find out which is the correct startup to provide funding. It may not have the right expertise, and that is true for most of the let's say situations. Whereas the alternate investment funds will have fund managers. These are the experts who have been operating in the market for many years. These have the right tools, technology for the analysis. They have a basic idea of how the startups actually work, whether this particular project is a proof of concept or not, because all of this analysis has to be done before deciding to invest in the startup. So that is the reason the government will provide the funding to the AIF. AIF will invest in the startups. And that is the reason, because the fund, that is the 10,000 crore rupee, the fund is investing in another fund. I repeat, the fund here is investing in another fund. This one is called as fund of funds. Fund of funds. Okay. Now, what is the announcement? Government of India announced Startup India Fund of Funds back in the year 2016. The funds have been utilized now. In the recent budget, 25 and 26, the government has announced another round of Startup India Fund that will be 10,000 crore rupees now. Another 10,000 crore rupees under the Startup India Fund 2.0 have been allocated. But the government now says we will not be using this particular funds only to focus on cities where the startups are present. We will also go to the lower tier cities now. And we will not just focus on some types of projects or some types of startups. There are certain science related or technology related, manufacturing related startups will start providing funding under this particular Fund of Funds 2.0 for these kind of startups. So these are certain very important points associated with the announcement. Now, let's solve a question here. Consider the following statements regarding Startup India Fund. It was launched by the government in 2016. Yes. And when I say Startup India Fund, I'm talking about Fund of Funds. The fund is created by the DPIIT. Yes, that is also true. The funds from the above are invested directly in the startups by the DPIIT. Directly in the startups? No. Right? These are invested in the AIF. AIF will invest in the startup. So first and second are correct. Right option for the question will be option B. Only two are correct. Now, let's move forward. Third article, tariff cuts in free trade agreements likely to cost India 1 trillion rupees in financial year 27. What is the importance of this? In the last 2 to 3 weeks, there has been a lot of discussion regarding free trade agreements. And this is not new, by the way, because in the last 5 years, I repeat, in the last 5 years, India has signed 9 free trade agreements. 9 free trade agreements with a group of 38 countries. With a 38 country group like this. So the argument is, when there is so much of discussion on the free trade agreement, the focus is always on what is the benefit India is deriving and what is the benefit the other party is deriving. And everything will boil down to what will happen to textile sector, what will happen to gems and jewelry, what will happen to the labor movement, what will happen to the imports such as cars, etc., etc. But one area that is very often dismissed in the discussion, one area that is neglected in the discussion is the amount of revenue losses that the government of India will incur because of these trade agreements. The amount of revenue losses. What do I mean by revenue losses here? Let me give you one example. The government of India very recently has signed a trade agreement with European Union, the bloc of 27 countries. And according to this particular trade agreement, once the trade agreement comes into place, the tariffs or the customs duties which is applicable on the import of cars, of course, quota, etc., is all of this is in the place, by the way. But essentially the idea is this. When this particular car will be imported from European Union, right now the highest rate of customs duty applicable is 110%. Mind you, 110%. And this 110% will be reduced over a period of time and will be brought down to how much? 10%. Now you think of it. If the government will reduce the customs duty from 110 to just 10%, don't you think the government of India will be losing lot of tax revenue because of this? Correct? The government will be losing huge amount of tax revenues because of this. So the issue that has been raised in this article is one parameter that we are ignoring right now is the loss of tax revenues because of the FTAs that you are signing. And I know a lot of you will be thinking, but is it not the same for the other side as well? That is, if India is losing out the tax revenues because they have reduced or eliminated the tariff altogether, it will be done by the other country as well, the other party in the trade agreement. But please understand, yes, the other country, that is the other party to the trade agreement, will also have to forego the tax receipts because they will also provide certain benefits to India's exports. They will also agree to reduce the customs or eliminate the customs. Agreed, no doubt regarding that. But the problem here is the amount of tax revenues that the government will forego will be much greater. Reason is, India's most favored nation rate, MFN rate, India's most favored nation rate are one of the highest. That is, generally we apply to any country which is trading with us, of course without any trade agreement, without any concession, etc. If these trading partners are trading and all of them export the same product, we are imposing the same customs duty, but that customs duty rate is high. In many of the cases it is double digits. Especially this has been done in order to protect the domestic industry. For example, we want to protect agriculture sector. We want to protect the farmers. We want to protect automobiles, etc. So for that particular purpose, we have kept the customs duties at an elevated level. So when you sign the agreement, the other country says, I'm going to reduce the tariff to zero, eliminate it. Now we will also reciprocate, reduce our tariff to zero. It could be 15, now we have dragged it down to zero. So don't you think the amount of tax receipts that we will forego by eliminating the customs duty to 0% will be much, much greater? And that is exactly what is happening. And according to the analysis which has been done here, according to the analysis, in the financial year 27 alone, in the financial year 27 only, the amount of tax receipts that Indian government will forego because of these particular trade agreements is 1 trillion rupees. 1 trillion rupees. And that's not a small amount, it's a very, very huge amount. But having said so, there is a counter argument here as well. The counter argument is the government has never introduced the customs duty as a source of revenue, as a source of earning. The objective of customs duty is not to add to the income of the government. Rather, it is a tool in the foreign trade policy. It is a tool to provide protection to the domestic industries, etc. So this is the counter argument in the context of the debate that is happening now. Now, next one, external commercial borrowing regulations or the rules have been liberalized by Reserve Bank of India. Some time ago, the notification was issued or the guidelines were issued, and now these have been announced to come into force. Now, what is ECB? External commercial borrowing. Any entity in India, I repeat, any entity in India which is allowed to attract foreign direct investment, meaning in simple terms, any of the sector where FDI is allowed. And if you as a company are operating in this particular sector, now you can borrow from the external market. Simple. Under this route, you are allowed to borrow from the external market. And this particular borrowing is called as external commercial borrowing, ECB, external commercial borrowing. The Reserve Bank of India has observed one concerning outcome in recent times. The concerning outcome is there is a continuous outflow of the dollars from the Indian market. Lot of foreign investors are withdrawing money from India. They are taking out the money out of India. And not to forget, even when you look at FDI, the FDI in the recent months has become a net FDI. There is a net FDI in the context of India. So as a result of these kind of events in the market, what is happening to rupee value? Rupee value is depreciating. Rupee value is depreciating. Now, in order to control this slide of Indian rupee, in order to control the slide of Indian rupee, the Reserve Bank of India has announced liberalized ECB, external commercial borrowing norms. Now, what are the important changes? Let's have a look at it. Under the new ECB norms, the companies are now allowed to borrow up to $1 billion, up to $1 billion. Until now, it was 750 million. This has been extended to $1 billion or 300% of the net worth of the company. Net worth essentially means the difference between assets and liabilities. The difference between assets and liabilities. So I'll repeat it again. Until now, you were allowed to borrow up to 750 million. Now you can borrow up to 1 billion or up to 300% of your net worth. This will provide a leeway. This will provide a freedom for the companies to borrow more amount of money. But in addition to this, there is one more very interesting change that has been done by RBI now. And that is in the context of interest rates. That is in the context of interest rates. Earlier, what used to happen, according to the guideline, there was a benchmark chosen, for example, LIBOR, and the RBI simply said, beyond this particular benchmark, I will give you a flexibility that is up to 450 basis points. Now, LIBOR plus 450 basis points. The rate of interest that you offer when you borrow from the external market, you will have to offer a rate of interest. So the rate of interest that you can offer maximum can be this external benchmark plus 450 basis points. What is the meaning of it? Let me give a very simple example. Imagine the external benchmark is, let's say, 4%. Let's imagine 4%. And the RBI would simply say, the maximum rate of interest that you are allowed to borrow is 450 basis points above the benchmark. 450 basis points will also become 4.5%. So when you borrow from the external market under the ECB, the maximum rate of interest that you can offer will be 8.5%. This kind of a cap or a ceiling was announced by RBI. But many of the companies, which are larger companies, they could do this. They could do this and they could borrow. But many of the medium-sized companies were not happy with this kind of a limit. The reason is because their credit rating is bit low and because they are medium-sized companies, when they go to external market, they would have to offer a higher rate of interest, even higher than what is decided now. They will have to hire, right? They will have to provide or offer a higher rate of interest so that they will be able to borrow from the ECB. They were not able to do this because there was a ceiling that was imposed by RBI like this. Now, this has been removed. This has been removed. And what does the RBI say? If you want to borrow, borrow at market determined lending rates. Market determined lending rates. That's also very important, by the way. And the third very important change is the eligible borrower shall raise ECB with a minimum average maturity period. MAMP, minimum average maturity period of 3 years. Provided, right, let's say there are certain exceptions also. For example, if you are involved in manufacturing and you can, under this, you can borrow from a duration of 1 to 3 years, but assuming that you have an outstanding amount not exceeding more than $150 million. In addition to these three that I've listed here, there is one more very important change. The base of borrowers, that is who are allowed to borrow under the ECB, that base has been expanded. The base of lenders, that is essentially from whom we can take loans under ECB, that base also has been extended or expanded by Reserve Bank of India. With all of this, RBI is expecting that inflow of dollars under the ECB route into India will be higher in the coming days. And that will address the issue of outflow of the dollars, which is causing depreciation of Indian rupee. Now, next important concept, the new CPI series. The new CPI series. I've already made a separate video on this. If you're yet to watch it, because it's a detailed video, do watch it. What is the new CPI series? We have CPI and WPI. For CPI measurement, the old base year that was used was 2012. Now we have updated the base year along with updating the basket as well. From 2012, now the base year has been shifted or changed to 2024. Along with the base year, generally what we also see, and this is very common by the way, we also see the changes in the basket. Earlier in the basket, 299 commodities were there. Now in the basket, there are 358 commodities. Earlier in the basket, 40 goods were there, now 50. There were earlier in the basket, 40 services were there, now 50 services. There were 259 goods, now there are 308 goods. The food and beverage earlier had a weightage of almost 46%. Now this has been reduced to almost 37%. So please go through this particular table my suggestion, memorize this table. Please memorize this particular table. And not just this, my another suggestion is memorize this particular representation of comparison of weightages in the old base year as well as the new base year. Questions can be asked in the prelims examination, which will be based on the comparison of the weights, or how many groups are there, which has the highest weightage, which has the lowest weightage, etc. So these are certain very important points that you need to keep a note in the context of the CPI. Now, in addition to this, the new basket of CPI has been framed by taking into consideration the household consumption expenditure survey data of 23 and 24. The rural rent, earlier the rural rents on housing were not compiled. Now in the new base year, in that basket, we are compiling that. Earlier, what were the changes in the prices of e-commerce websites that we used to purchase the goods and services? The changes in the prices was not accounted. Now, on weekly basis, the Government of India, that is MOSPI, Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation, specifically under that, National Statistics Office says that we are going to collect that data as well. So, a lot of changes have been announced by the Government of India under the rebasing exercise associated with the CPI. Please go through all of it. Expect a question on this in the prelims and as well as mains examination. Now, the next article, in fact, the last one in today's session, right, the concept of a lead bank scheme. The Reserve Bank of India has planned to revise lead bank scheme to boost effectiveness. What is the idea? Back in the year 1969, based on multiple committee recommendations, there was an introduction of a scheme by the name of lead bank scheme. Under this particular lead bank scheme, what used to happen was there were multiple banks along with multiple agencies which are working at a district level. Now the district was taken as a base, right, as a base for implementation here, and multiple committees were created. Multiple committees or groupings were created, so that there is a cooperation and coordination between the banks as well as the other government agencies, which will ensure the right funding for projects will happen, the right projects will be identified, the priority for the projects will be provided, priority sectors will be prioritized, etc. So that there is a better coordination and cooperation, the lead bank scheme was implemented. And the reason why it is called as a lead bank was, out of all the banks which are operational at this particular level, there will be one bank identified as a lead bank. And that will be responsible for coordination and cooperation amongst all the participants here. So the committees were created at multiple levels for effective implementation of, right, let's say, these kind of initiatives of the government. So Reserve Bank of India now has stated, I will have a look at the objectives of the lead bank scheme, right? I will look at how the lead bank scheme has worked out, and I'm planning to revise, right? Revise the objective of or let's say the scheme of a lead bank, so that better effectiveness can be obtained from this initiative. Right? So let's wait and see what will be the announcement done by the Reserve Bank of India in the context of LBS. So these are the 6 articles along with the concepts and the questions which have appeared in the different newspapers from 12th to 18th February 2026. If you have liked the discussion, do not forget to hit the like button. If you are yet to join our YouTube channel, kindly do it right now. See you next time. Till then, take care and have a great day.